back.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
in session, man. We got a lot of shit to talk about.
Nah, we definitely do got a lot of stuff to talk about. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's get the somber news out the way. First of all, rest in peace to Juice WRLD.
Rest up.
You know, rest in peace. He was probably one of those younger rappers that, you know, actually he was a little bit different than some of the other ones. Like to me, he came across as more like rap, but also a little bit of a rock vibe to some of the stuff that he does. So yeah, man, rest in peace to him. The according to what the news report says. And I wanted to talk to you about this, about the drug culture in hip hop.
Let's get into it.
That's a serious conversation to get into. But first of all, for according to what the report says, and these are the initial reports, and I'm gonna go ahead and just say, take it with a grain of salt, because normally they dog somebody first, and then they come out with the actual report that probably doesn't have anything bad to say.
Right.
Nobody ever remembers that. You only remember the bad report.
Correct.
But according to what the report says, is that he had 70 pounds of weed,
of cannabis,
marijuana,
the devil's grass,
the devil's lettuce, 70 pounds of marijuana, and he had pills on the plane, which, according to what they said, the captain, the pilot was snitching on him, called the cops. So there was the cops waiting for them when they were going back to wherever they were going to. So he ended up deciding to just swallow all of the pills, which, according to the initial report, again, was Percocet. And he passed away from having a seizure in the airport.
Yeah, another tale that's obviously become too frequent in the community, especially in these past couple years, with losing different guys like the likes of Mac Miller, who also passed here recently to drug abuse. I think we lost him last year. Little Xan, was that the other one?
Little Xan, I believe. Little Peep.
A few other ones who've done passed away throughout the years due to these prescription drugs. There's nothing to play with, and it's getting to a point to where now we can almost say it's an epidemic in the culture. It needs to stop being glorified in the culture.
What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's twofold. One, you definitely it's being glorified way too much, and music has a huge influence on not just young people, but on people as a whole. Music influences all of us, from the young all the way up to the old. But what's really been irking me here recently is that people are basically saying that I don't know if doing drugs is necessarily part of hip hop culture. Not prescription drugs. Only prescription drug that I ever known to really be part of the culture. And when I say part of the culture, it really is from one section of the culture and from the country, and that's lean. And I understand that with the lean, which is still a opioid, it's just liquid heroin, but that's been part of the culture for a long time. But I don't really remember when popping pills became part of the culture. Maybe that was part of I think Future and Lil Wayne really helped kind of usher that movement in.
Yeah, because I remember hearing it. The only time I remember hearing about pills in hip hop culture was Eminem. I think Eminem really came out.
Eminem ushered it in also.
Yeah, he was all that stuff, mushroom, acid pills. Like, he was probably the only person. So it definitely is something new. But I think, to your point, like Future, Lil Wayne, and now it's to a point where it's not even hidden anymore. It's more like you're rapping about it, and these kids are dancing along, popping pills.
Because with me and you, and I appreciate you mentioning M, because M really came in at a point in time where it was really kind of taboo to pop pills and things of that sort. That was more so left to our rock star counterparts on the other side, the rock bands and things of that sort, was really popping pills and doing the acid heavy. I remember D12 had the hit record, Purple Pills. Mm-hmm. But it really wasn't until, for at least my generation, when I was coming up in high school and college, it was really Wayne and Future that really brought the pills to the forefront. And what's also sad, I was reading a report earlier that said the first time that Juice met Future, the first thing he said to him was, "I want to thank you for introducing me to lean." And again,
how is that something to thank somebody over?
Right. Like, for those of you who don't know, who hear about the lean or the purple drink or what have you, or the Easter pink Sprite, it's nothing more than liquid heroin. And for me being from Baltimore, Maryland, that's the black tar capital of the United States right now. Heroin is nothing to play with, and we definitely need to stop the glorification of the drug use in the culture. At some point, you used to be the drug dealer to make money, but we never glorified the drug user And that's the day and age that we're in now, where a lot of people are glorifying the drug user, and it kind of needs to stop.
And I think that's what I probably had the biggest issue with, because you have somebody like Future who does songs like Molly Percocet, everybody dancing, like, oh, you hear that beat? That shit's record. Dope. You hear the flutes.
Right, you hear the flutes.
You hear the flutes. They don't even care about what he's saying. But just to your point, I think the biggest thing with the, just like you said, as far as glorifying the usage, I think the problem, to your point, now I don't think it's anything that's going to stop anytime soon. Like, to me,
so you don't think you don't think they're going to slow down the drug use train?
No, because they keep holding the wrong people accountable. When Mac Miller got arrested, they arrested his drug dealer. Like, how are you going to arrest this drug dealer when he's the one who willingly purchased the drug?
I agree with that 100%.
That and the reason I bring this up is because I feel like the problem with the drug use in the culture now is back then. So rappers would so you started like what, the 70s and 80s where crack is whack and all those raps.
Right.
Then you move to the point where you're rapping like a drug dealer. Like drug dealer rap was popping in the 90s, early 2000s. But the difference in drug dealer rap is anybody cannot be a drug dealer.
Right.
But you can be a drug user.
Correct.
Easily.
Correct. There's rules and regulations in the drug game as far as you selling it. But there's not really too many rules and regulations as far as you using it. Now, I definitely know that there's rules and regulations as far as using codeine. There's certain things you don't want to do, but that's just because that's a whole culture from that section of the country, and primarily I'm talking about Texas, Houston.
Right.
It's real big in Atlanta now, but I'm just still a little confused because the initial reports are saying that he consumed all these the drug that they're saying it was Percocets. I'm just confused as to why you thought that would be a viable way to avoid getting hemmed up by the law.
Do you think that's a true report? Let's start there. Because to me, it seems like it'd be much easier just to flush it down the toilet.
To me, it would seem like it would definitely be a much easier to flush it down the toilet. Or even if that wasn't a viable option, it seems as though to me he wasn't on the plane by himself.
Have a fall guy.
And he's the golden goose, right? He's the guy making all the money for the team, for his family, for the label, et cetera, et cetera. Why wouldn't we at least, at minimum, divvy up the pills? I don't understand why he had to take them all by himself.
That's a good point because you get a lesser charge if you have less on you. So,
but now the 70 pounds of grass, you guys were screwed on that anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can smoke 70 pounds of grass, and and I'm Sky High Ree, I smoke, and I don't think you smoking 70 pounds of grass.
Now, do you think that he did this thinking he was going to get away with it, or do you think he did this thinking like, fuck it, I'm gonna go to jail for a long time, let me commit suicide?
Well, from what the reports are saying was that he downed these pills, and then he was seizing. They were able to resuscitate him, but then he ultimately still died.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. But when you're on those type of drugs, man, you're not in your right state of mind. So how you would normally think and process things is not the same. But I just don't understand why that he would feel it was a viable option for him to down so many. But then again, in the day and age, in this Instagram and Twitter and Facebook world, Snapchat world, where you have rappers trying to gain clout, up and coming rappers. I just saw a video the other day. I'm not going to mention the artist's name because he ain't paying. But he took 10 pills on Instagram Live just trying to gain clout. But that's the culture and the era that we're in. We're in the clout chasing culture. So,
well, here's why. Let's kind of circling back. Here's why I don't think this epidemic is going to end anytime soon.
Even with all the deaths, you think it's going to keep on rolling? I don't think it's going to.
And here's why. Because I feel like this is bigger than a hip hop problem. This is an America problem.
Okay.
Just as just as a country, and now we're in that culture where things like anxiety. Let's kind of circle it back. Anxiety is a hot topic. Everybody has anxiety.
Absolutely.
You've had anxiety for a long time. Nothing's different. Anxiety is as common as having asthma.
Yes, sir.
But because now anxiety or OCD issues, like these very common things that people have, doctors are willing to prescribe them so much medication as just a pharmaceutical, like thinking big picture, that I don't see it stopping because I feel like this is impacting the average person, not just somebody in music. So because you get in a car accident, they give you those pills, and then you start taking them. That's how addiction ends up happening, and then if you got music to go along with it, you're not thinking nothing's wrong, and they're trying to get you addicted to this stuff.
And yeah, I definitely agree with you on that point because big pharma's big money, man.
Yeah,
that's big time money. They're making money hand over fist with this, but because as much as people try to demonize hip hop culture and the music that we love, the music that we enjoy, but hip hop dictates a lot of things in this country, man.
Oh, like, yeah, especially now. It's the biggest genre.
It's the biggest genre. You know, shout out, to Taylor Swift, who won Artist of the Decade. That's great. She beat out Drake fraudulently. She shouldn't have beat him out.
That is some bullshit.
She shouldn't have beat him out. But I think it came down to the actual numbers, because she had more number one hits in the past 10 years than anybody else, but she can't even put out her own music. But we ain't gonna talk about that today. But the country goes, as hip hop goes, so does the country, or so does the U.S. And it's definitely putting a bad light on the hip hop community these past couple years with so many deaths. But it's not just that, man. We can even take it back the whole decade. How many artists have we lost to some sort of substance abuse?
Yeah, man. I feel like the same, and I'm not getting too deep because we're gonna get down a rabbit hole with this comparison, but I'll just say it. It's the same thing that we're looking at in other areas. So they're looking at, when Mac Miller died, they arrested the drug dealer versus talking about the actual drug problem. It's the same with everything in the United States, in my opinion. It's like you focus on one thing rather than the bigger problem. Like, as bad as it sounds making this comparison, and I'm not saying the two are similar, but look at something along the lines of like, any single time there's some type of shooting, they focus on the wrong issues versus the real.
They focus on the gun instead of the shooter.
Right. They focus on the gun instead of the shooter, and focus on the mental health aspect of it. And I think it all boils down to the same thing. I don't think that. Now, granted, when this whole Juice WRLD death happening, there's a lot of rappers that are coming out there talking about their drug use. So Meek Mill came out and talked about all of the pills that he was popping.
Right.
Fat Joe came in an interview, was talking about crack use.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of artists that are actually talking about the uses, but just talking about it doesn't do enough, because the only thing these young kids are hearing is, hey, people are doing drugs, and that don't matter to them. Even though they're seeing what's happening with it, somewhere in their mind is always going to be, it's not going to happen to me.
Right. Exactly. And I'm glad that you said that. So really more so what you need is, instead of talking about your particular drug use, we just try to figure out a solution to the problem. And especially if you're some of these big time artists, you mentioned Meek, you mentioned Joe. I remember even hearing an article where Future, who was the drug using king, openly admitted in an interview that he doesn't even use the drugs that he talks about.
Yeah. That's like I woke up in my new, woke up in the new Bugatti.
It was Ace Hood who said he woke up in a new Bugatti, and on the Breakfast Club they asked him, did he have one? He said he never owned one.
Same thing.
But he said it was a number one record. He said it was a mindset. I guess I can understand that.
And Future's been, and you know what? That's even a good example. Future's been talking about not just drug use, but also been talking about stuff like he's been telling himself that telling us that he's gonna kill us in every single song the last few years, and all we've been doing is dancing to it. Like nobody really cares about what the deeper issues are. So no, honestly, I just don't see it happening. I don't see anything changing after Juice WRLD's death. Now I wish it would change, obviously, because and I can't relate to this culture. We were just talking about this off mic, but just
when you say you can't relate, elaborate a little bit. What do you mean?
The music now, I definitely am to get off my lawn guy. It's 28 years old. 1,000%.
Okay, you're that guy.
Get off my lawn guy.
You're Stanley.
Yeah,
I got you. You're Stanley. And for those of you who are too young to understand, that's a Friday reference. Go watch the movie.
I'm definitely 1,000%. Because here's the reason why is because the stuff that they talk about, I just can't relate to it. Like, I'm not doing pills. I'm not trying to do pills. It has never once crossed my mind to do pills growing up. Like because I came from a different area, you know what I mean? Like, I came from Detroit, Michigan. You came from Baltimore, Maryland. The things that we saw were not pills. That was more middle class culture. The stuff that we saw was things like, crack.
We couldn't afford the pills. The pill game was a little too crazy for us.
Yeah, so the stuff that we saw was like crack and stuff like that, heroin, like just normal stuff. And you never thought about doing that. So these kids, they have so much access to it. I mean, and it's so easy to sneak around. Like, it's not like
it's no longer a how would we say it? It's no longer a rich people drug now, man. These pills are now reaching every part of the country.
Right.
All the way up to your prep schools, all the way down to your most ghettoest schools in the hood.
Right. And I remember, man, I went to a club in Tampa in Ybor, and some dude was passing out sandwiches with ecstasy in it. Craziest shit I've ever seen. Never even once. I never even thought about eating that when he tried to pass it out. Now, mind you, that sandwich looked delicious as hell. And as a fat boy, I'm like, oh, you put mayo on that shit? Yeah, I thought it would be a good sandwich, but never once crossed my mind. So I just think these kids now, I think ultimately, here's what I'm not going to get too deep because we'll get down the rabbit hole. We got some other stuff to talk about, but I think that kids are so exposed to way too much now in this information age that anything that they can use to get away from the struggles of life, they're going to do it. I think that the information age.
But for us, the struggles in life, I don't think the struggles are too different from They might be different struggles, but it's all pretty much, you might experience them in a different way. But for us, man, you would just either crack open a bottle of some Hennessy and hit a J. It was never, let me go home and down 3-4 Percocets. In addition to the alcohol, in addition to the lean, I just think that overall the glorification of drugs in the hip hop culture needs to stop.
Yeah, that's true. But I also think that kids are experiencing things that we didn't experience growing up.
It's a whole different age.
Yeah, because back then,
social media age is something serious. Man.
Right, because back then I remember it was a big deal for you to get cell phones. Kids are getting cell phones now at the age of 6, 7. They have Instagrams. They're seeking attention. They need that likes. If they don't see likes, they feel a certain way about it. Like they got so much going on this age that I think they have a different struggle. But the biggest thing for me, I'm hoping that this whole Juice WRLD death ends up bringing people to do is stop doing these pills and talk about the dangers of them. Like, I think we need an artist to come out, a big artist to come out and talk about that. Like, talk about the dangers of it. Because even in those days where rappers were rapping about selling drugs, you had the rapper. Yeah, you've had the rapper that talked about, like, look at what this did to my family.
Right.
Like, they talked about the struggle of it. And I don't think anybody's doing that. So I hope that this death will bring people to do that. Bring people to start talking about, like, hey, this is what I've seen happen, raising more awareness so kids will stop doing it. You're not going to stop people from doing drugs 100%, but at least it'll be less of a hot topic and less of something that happens all the time. Like, that's the only thing I could hope out of this whole situation.
To kind of put a whole bow on the situation, I kind of like what you said there. In our era, you had they told you the good and the bad of doing drugs, of selling drugs. You knew what could happen, but I feel like nowadays they just glorifying. I just popped a pill. Oh, thank God for the pills. I'm like, nah, you're not really giving kids a full. Hip hop used to be where you used to go get your ghetto report, and it was the hood news, the urban news, unfiltered, unadulterated. But now they're only giving you one side; they're not giving you the full picture, and that's not the culture. The culture is giving you the full picture.
1,000%. So just to wrap it up, rest in peace, Juice WRLD.
Rest in peace.
Stop the drug usage.
Definitely
goes out to the family. He just had his open casket funeral, open casket funeral. So definitely rest in peace.
Do you know if he's having anything for fans? Have you? I know that was a private ceremony what they just had. You have to imagine they're gonna do something.
I'd imagine they're gonna do something. So we'll see what ends up happening. Definitely rest in peace to Juice WRLD. Now, speaking of doing drugs, Nick Cannon thinks he won the Eminem beef. React.